Hello everyone. There's a lot going on with Ukraine at the moment, and people are talking about peace, but other people are using that for their own agendas and to talk up escalation and war again. But before we get into that, one of the most important things that has just happened this week is that the incursion of the Ukrainian forces into Kursk in Russia, the whole Kursk region or oblast there, has been roundly defeated by the Russian forces. So Ukraine poured into the area in August 2024, and the aim of that was to try to take over the Kursk nuclear power station, which would have caused horrendous problems for Russia in its energy supply to the whole of that region of Russia, and also to keep Russian forces tied up while they to force them to redeploy troops from the south and east of Ukraine into Russia itself, into Kursk region, to stop the Ukrainian forces advancing north in Russia. Actually, they're a long way from Moscow, but that's the direction they were going in. Now, Russia stopped the advance there within a couple of weeks in the summer, and they've been pushing slowly back on Ukrainian forces ever since. And this week, there was a rout. Essentially, the Russians won that battle conclusively, and most of the Ukrainian forces just ran back over the border into Ukraine. But of course, some of them have been caught in cauldrons, and as Russia then puts the noose around those cauldrons, if you like, metaphorically, the people who are trapped there, the Ukrainian soldiers and probably NATO soldiers with them, because they're embedded with the Ukrainian forces, elite forces there, are going to be taken as prisoners of war. Well, the Ukrainians will be. Who knows what's going to happen to the mercenaries from NATO countries who are acting as NATO soldiers, but are, they leave active service in their armies, and then the next day they sign up with private military companies. So they are effectively mercenaries, and I don't think the future looks too good for them. Now, President Trump weighed in on this, and he said, well, we want peace. Zelensky has said he's offering a 30-day ceasefire. And then President Trump says, look, we need to make sure that these Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk are not slaughtered. Okay, I agree with that. We don't want anyone else killed. But President Putin then said, quite wisely, he didn't agree to the ceasefire which was being put on the table by Zelensky, but he said, I think this is a good idea, we'd like this, but I have some questions. What's going to happen to all of these elite soldiers, effectively Ukrainian soldiers, which have invaded Kursk and have treated people there brutally, acted in a manner which is consistent with terrorists, killing civilians and destroying houses and homes and farms and things like that. What about them? What about the front line? What will happen if someone accuses one side or the other of breaking the ceasefire over the 30-day period? What about that? And are you just going to use this 30-day ceasefire that's proposed by Zelensky to rearm? And so that the situation for Russia will be worse off after 30 days of ceasefire than if they didn't agree to it in the first place. And I imagine President Putin is thinking, well, the Minsk agreements were put in place in 2015, and they said there Russian-speaking people in the east of Ukraine would have autonomy, and there wouldn't be any rearming. But then NATO leaders have actually admitted they used those 7 or 8 years between 2015 and the start of the special military operation in 2022 to rearm. And it was just a ruse in order to get a cessation in hostilities and fighting so that NATO countries could rearm Ukraine. And then the plan was that they were going to sweep in and destroy the autonomy of Donetsk and Luhansk, take back Crimea, and then perhaps start agitating for regime change in Russia, which we know some think tanks in the American military-industrial complex have proposed already. So President Putin is probably thinking, well, the ceasefire it sounds good, but it may actually do more harm than good for his side. obviously. Now, the only thing that Western leaders should ever be trying to do in this conflict is to stop the fighting, stop the slaughter. You know, to me, this war looks like an absolute tragedy, because you have white Christians fighting white Christians mostly, and they're killing each other, you know, same as what happened in the First World War. And it's an absolutely horrible situation. We have to try and stop it. You know, that's the only thing we should be doing. But in the UK, against the wishes of most British people, I would say, Keir Starmer has weighed into this and said, well, now we are going to enter an operational phase. And they're going to have this meeting coming up this week on Thursday, where he's going to gather the heads of his so-called coalition of the willing, harkening back to the Iraq War and George W. Bush, the second Iraq War, getting the coalition of the willing together to go and invade Iraq. And so this is the language that Keir Starmer is using, and he is advocating for putting troops on the ground in Ukraine. Of course, that's something else which is not going to go down very well in Russia and is not going to bring a lasting peace. It's just going to escalate and inflame the situation even more. Now, Keir Starmer, all he needs to do is shut up, because this has got nothing to do with the UK, really. I mean, there's no benefit to the people of the UK whatsoever in keeping involved in Ukraine, in putting British troops on the ground. I mean, the UK army is now only 70,000 people compared to 1.5 million soldiers in Russia. I mean, even if you include the Navy and the Air Force in our total number of military personnel and all the reservists as well, I think it's about 200,000 in total, including the people in the territorial army who, you know, are not totally up to speed with being, you know, trained right up to date. So there's no way that the UK can take on the Russian army, and we shouldn't be doing. What we need to be doing is protecting our own borders here from the invasion across the English Channel, but they can't seem to stop that. So I don't think they're going to be much use in Ukraine anyway, even if they do go there, because we're not even controlling our own borders, let alone, you know, being able to control Ukraine's borders. And that's not something we should be doing anyway. So, but he is trying to get all these countries together, European countries, that will include France and Germany. I think Italy has rejected that. Italy, and Meloni is not going to be part of that. Good for her. That's a good decision on her part. Of course, Viktor Orban in Hungary and Peter Fico in Slovakia are not going to be involved, because they are far more sensible and they talk about peace rather than escalating war. So Keir Starmer really just needs to shut his mouth and do something just productive to the UK. But of course, domestically, he's engaged in destroying the economy and the society in this country. So it doesn't surprise me that he's making really unwise and dangerous statements, inflammatory and incendiary statements about Ukraine as well at this time. But of course, the majority of people don't agree with him, and they didn't vote for him in large numbers. He only got in by default because the last party that was in power, the fake Conservative Party, was so bad that half of their voters just didn't turn up to vote. So we are where we are. But this is going to be a very key week. This is a key time for Ukraine. Russia's retaken the Kursk oblast and gone even further, and is now creating a buffer zone within Ukraine, within Sumy Oblast, to stop any repeat of the situation where Ukrainian elite forces went over into Russian territory proper. So let's hope that we have wisdom from the leaders of the collective West and NATO countries. But given their records over the last 10 years, I very much doubt that's going to happen. So it's really up to the people to shout about this, that we need to stop giving weapons and money to escalate this war and just seek to stop the slaughter. That's all.